To get my family off my back about getting married, I hired a girl online for a sham wedding. But when we got to the courthouse to register, the clerk looked at me with pure disdain. You're already married and you're here to register again? Have you ever heard of bigamy? After leaving the courthouse, I stared at the printed marriage certificate, completely baffled. The girl I hired looked at me with pity. Mr. Vance, if you're already married, why did you waste money hiring me? Then, with a quick, the deposit is non-refundable, she took off. I stood there, stunned. I'd never even held a girl's hand, so how could I possibly be married? I looked at the printout again. The man in the photo was definitely me. As for the woman, her name was Chloe Sterling. She was beautiful, but I had absolutely no idea who she was. I took out my phone, snapped a picture of the document, and sent it via iMessage to a contact with a black profile picture. Find out who she is for me. The reply was instant. Got it. Only then did I manage to suppress my confusion. I got on my beat-up electric scooter and slowly rode into a luxurious gated community. Just as I parked it in a corner, I overheard the staff gossiping behind me. Who is that? He's so handsome. Shoo, don't say that. He's the illegitimate son Mr. Vance refuses to acknowledge. His mother is the mistress. She showed up here pregnant right when Mrs. Vance was about to give birth, demanding recognition. They ended up having their babies on the same day. That woman has no shame. She's been finding excuses to hang around the house for years. He, on the other hand, knows his place. He moved out in middle school and hasn't been back in years. I wonder what brings him here today. I frowned, pretending not to hear them, and walked into the living room. My mother, Linda Reed, was waiting by the door. The moment I stepped inside, she anxiously pulled me upstairs. Come with me to see your brother first. By the way, did you get the marriage certificate? I replied flatly, I got it. The bride was different, but I suppose it still counted. Good. You need to remember your place. Stella Sterling is your brother's fiancée. A top-tier, old-money family like that is completely out of your league as an illegitimate son. Only your brother is worthy of her. A flicker of scorn crossed my eyes at her words. Stella Sterling of California, the eldest granddaughter of Seacrest City's most prominent family, the Sterlings, had pursued me for 4 years in college. But on graduation day, she got together with my brother, Brandon Vance. When Linda found out, she demanded I marry someone immediately to completely sever any possibility between Stella and me. It had always been like this. Whenever there was even the slightest conflict of interest between Brandon and me, Linda would demand I back down without question. Because I was the illegitimate son, my very existence was a sin. I was brainwashed as a child into thinking this was all normal, but I had long since woken up. I looked at Linda mockingly. We agreed. This is the last time. The mistake was hers to begin with. She was the one who shamelessly stayed in the Vance household just to see my father every day. She was the one who wanted to curry favor with Brandon. I wasn't going to pay for her choices with my life. This time, I was taking the opportunity to repay the debt of my birth and make a clean break. Linda said impatiently, I know. As she spoke, we arrived at Brandon's room. When Brandon saw me, he greeted me, Ethan, what are you doing here? Before I could speak, Linda jumped in. Brandon, Ethan got married today. Brandon was surprised. So soon? Who is she? Is she better than Stella? Linda sneered. How could that be possible? You can't find anyone in all of Seacrest City with a better background than Miss Sterling. Who could he possibly find? She's just some street punk. He didn't even dare bring her, probably afraid her poverty would offend your eyes. Brandon's voice was tinged with jealousy. I doubt that. Ethan's so handsome, otherwise Stella wouldn't have chased him for 4 years. What good is being handsome? With his status, only some trash he picked up off the street would marry him. Miss Sterling just treated him like a toy to play with for a while. Only someone of your standing, Brandon, is worthy of her. I frowned. The woman in the photo, with her looks and aura, didn't seem like a street punk or poverty-stricken at all. But I couldn't be bothered to argue about such meaningless insults. Just then, Brandon finished putting on his watch. He went to put on his leather shoes but found his shirt was too tight to bend over comfortably. Brandon smiled faintly and looked at me. Seeing this, Linda immediately shoved me. You useless thing, are you blind? Your brother is having trouble. Hurry up and help him with his shoes. It was happening again. Linda, did she really think I was still that ignorant little boy from our childhood? The one who didn't know how to fight back when bullied? My expression turned cold, my voice laced with impatience. You can help him yourself. Ethan Vance. What kind of attitude is that? You think you've grown wings just because you got married? Your wife is just a gold digger. She'll have to rely on the Vance family sooner or later. Linda's voice rose as she continued her tirade. If you don't get on your brother's good side now, You and your wife will come crawling to him one day. Besides, the Vance family raised you. You should be willing to work like a dog for them." Before I could retort, my father, Walter Vance, appeared at the door. He frowned. "We have an important guest arriving soon. What are you all arguing about?" Brandon said nothing, but Linda started to wail. "It's this wicked son of mine. He got his marriage license today, and now he doesn't even respect me as his mother." Hearing this, Walter's gaze fell on me. "Married? Why didn't you let the family set you up with someone? Do you have the certificate? Let me see it." Faced with this rare show of concern from my estranged father, I hesitated for a moment before pulling the printout from my bag. But the next second, Linda snatched it from my hand. "Let me see what this punk wife of yours is named." Brandon, meanwhile, asked curiously, "Dad, who's coming that has you so on edge?" Thinking of the guest, Walter's face lit up with pride, and he excitedly announced a name, Chloe Sterling. I froze the moment I heard the name. Seeing our confusion, Walter explained proudly, "It's normal that you don't know her. She's very mysterious. Even I have never met her. She is Stella's aunt, and at only 28, she has become the true head of the Sterling family." Linda blurted out, "Wouldn't she be an even better match for Brandon than Stella? The head of the family is much better than the eldest granddaughter." Walter snapped, "What nonsense are you talking about? Miss Sterling is already married." I narrowed my eyes. Married? If the person on my marriage certificate was really her, then Chloe Sterling must know what was going on. Linda looked slightly disappointed. "Who's her husband? He must be even luckier than Brandon." My eyes shot straight to Walter, but he just said, "I don't know. I heard that neither she nor her husband enjoys social events." Walter frowned, deep in thought. I have no idea why she decided to visit on such short notice. The Sterlings were the #1 family in Seacrest City, and their leader was a person of immense prestige. The Vance family was merely upper middle class. This marriage was already a huge step up for Brandon. It would be a great honor for the head of the Sterling family to even attend the wedding, so why would she personally visit on the day of the betrothal gifts? Linda declared firmly, "It must be because Brandon is so outstanding that he's caught the Sterling family's attention." With that, she shoved the unread printout back into my hand and grabbed Brandon's arm, her face flushed with excitement. I gave a sarcastic smile. She was acting more invested than Mrs. Vance, his actual mother. Just then, the butler came upstairs to announce, "Sir, the Sterlings are about to arrive." Walter quickly turned to head downstairs. As he passed me, he said casually, "You haven't been home in a long time. Stay for a celebratory drink before you go." I nodded in agreement. I had to stay and see who this Chloe Sterling really was. In the room, Linda watched Brandon prepare to marry into a wealthy family, her eyes filled with unconcealable joy and satisfaction. 20-some years ago, if it hadn't been for Eleanor Vance, she would have been the one to marry Walter. She hated Eleanor, so she had deliberately caused a scene, gave birth on the same day, and switched their 2 babies at the hospital. Now, her son was finally going to make something of himself, and Eleanor would even prepare a generous gift for him. Meanwhile, Ethan Vance could only marry some street punk as a penniless, illegitimate son. Downstairs, I leaned lazily in the shadows by the staircase, my eyes fixed on the entrance, waiting for the Sterlings to arrive. After some time, Mrs. Vance came down the stairs, supported by a maid. She wore a purple dress, her figure slightly thin, exuding a scholarly and cool aura. The maid whispered, "Ma'am, you're not well. You should stay upstairs." Mrs. Vance coughed and shook her head. "No, Yuji, I can't. This is such an important day for Brandon. I can't miss it." I watched her back, my eyes filled with a deep affection. It was ironic. Mrs. Vance, the one person who had every right to hate me, was the only source of warmth I had in the Vance household. When I was a child, Linda often forgot to feed me. As soon as I could walk, I would often rummage through the trash cans for food because I was so hungry. After Mrs. Vance found me one day, she started leaving food for me in the garden at the same time every day. She did this for 12 years. If it weren't for her kindness, I probably would have starved to death long ago. Watching her walk away, hearing her intermittent coughs, I frowned with worry. Just then, there was a commotion at the entrance. The Sterlings had arrived. Walter and Eleanor greeted them at the door, and after a few pleasantries, they stepped aside to let the large group in. I spotted Chloe Sterling immediately. Her face was even more beautiful in person than in the photo. As if sensing my gaze, she suddenly looked over. For a moment, our eyes met, and her sharp glance made my heart skip a beat. I wanted to read the emotion in her eyes, but Chloe quickly looked away. This left me confused. Did she recognize me or not? Walter smiled obsequiously. "Miss Sterling, where is your husband? Didn't he come with you?" As he said this, I felt Chloe's eyes flick over me again before she replied coolly, "He couldn't make it." The group chatted as they walked towards the reception room. My old classmate who had pursued me for 4 years, Stella Sterling, followed behind the elders. In her formal dress, she looked more mature and composed than she had in college. She didn't see me, absent-mindedly chatting in a low voice with Brandon. Everyone gathered around Chloe as she took the seat of honor, and they began discussing the wedding arrangements. I finally stepped out of the shadows, standing quietly and watching the lively scene in the room. Suddenly, my arm was grabbed, and Linda hissed at me, "Ethan Vance, what are you still doing here? Are you not over Stella yet? Let me tell you, she's your sister-in-law now." I shook her off, a sneer on my face. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in being a homewrecker." It was Mr. Vance who told me to stay for a drink. Ever since I was old enough to understand, I had always referred to Walter as Mr. Vance. Linda gritted her teeth in anger. "He was just being polite, and you actually took him seriously? You really don't know your own worth. On an occasion like this, even I can't show my face and embarrass the Vance family. What makes an illegitimate son like you think you deserve a seat at the table? Get out of here now." I frowned impatiently and was about to speak when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe stand up. She pointed to her phone and walked towards the balcony, presumably to take a call. My eyes lit up. I gave Linda a dismissive reply, walked out of the living room, and changed direction towards the balcony. Just as I got close, the woman on the phone hung up and turned to look at me with icy eyes. I stopped in my tracks, met her dangerous gaze, and with a sudden smirk, I tentatively called out, "Honey!" I stared directly at Chloe, watching her reaction. Upon hearing my address, the chill emanating from her intensified. She looked at me coldly, her expression unchanging, then turned to leave. I quickly moved to block her path. Chloe's brow furrowed slightly. "Move! You don't know me?" Chloe looked down at me condescendingly. Should I? From the moment she entered the Vance house, she had felt an unusual gaze following her. The look was direct, not sickeningly fawning like the others. Chloe had glanced at me a few times, and when I was caught, I didn't look away but continued to watch her openly. She had thought I was different from the other men whose faces filled with greed upon seeing her, but it turned out I was even bolder, calling her honey right off the bat. Chloe's expression grew more impatient. "Sir, I am married. Please have some self-respect." I was a bit lost. She clearly didn't know me, yet she said she was married. Could the courthouse have made a mistake with the records? I asked, "May I ask who your husband is?" "None of your business." Another 4 cold words. I took out the copy of the marriage certificate and held it out to her. "Miss Sterling, the woman on here is you, isn't it?" Chloe looked at the copy, her eyes falling on the groom's name, Ethan Vance. When she looked up again, she said mockingly, "Mr. Vance, an original document isn't that expensive, is it? If you're going to forge something, at least be professional about it." With that, Chloe didn't return to the living room but strode through the small garden towards the parking lot. I ran after her, trying to explain, but 2 bodyguards in black suits blocked my way. I stopped and shouted at her, retreating back, "Miss Sterling, the certificate is real. If you don't believe me, you can check with the courthouse." Chloe didn't slow down, got into her car, and drove straight off. Her personal assistant, however, stayed behind and went back to the living room, where she ran into Brandon. Brandon had just seen me bothering Chloe but hadn't heard what we were saying. Now, seeing Chloe leave and me chasing after her on my scooter, he immediately asked, "Why did Miss Sterling leave? Did someone offend her?" The personal assistant smiled. "Miss Sterling had urgent business to attend to and had to leave. Could you please inform the elders of the family, Mr. Vance?" Brandon nodded at once and politely saw the assistant out. After she left, Walter asked worriedly, "Why did Miss Sterling leave? Was our hospitality lacking in some way?" Brandon thought about how distracted Stella had been all day, looking around as if searching for someone, and then he thought of my handsome face. He clenched his fists, his eyes glinting. "Dad, I saw Ethan harassing Miss Sterling. She left in a rage and even left a message." "What message?" "Miss Sterling said you should discipline your family members properly," Brandon continued. "With Ethan acting like this, won't the Sterling family think we have poor upbringing?" Walter's face instantly turned ashen. I had just ridden my scooter out of the gated community when I lost her. As I was fuming, my phone suddenly rang. I answered, and a woman's voice came through. "Boss, I've got the information on Chloe Sterling. Chloe Sterling is the second daughter of the old Mr. Sterling. Rumor has it she has a violent, cold-blooded personality, which is why she was sent abroad as a child. Everyone assumed the family business would be handed over to the eldest son, Stella's father. No one expected Chloe to suddenly return last week and, through some ruthless means, force the old man to step down and take direct control of Sterling Corporation. I frowned. Find her contact information and schedule. I'll go find her later. After hanging up, I rubbed my temples. This was getting complicated. A person of Chloe's status would be surrounded by bodyguards. She wouldn't be easy to approach. I shouldn't have been so impulsive and called her honey today, scaring her off. I sighed, started my little scooter, and slowly headed home. I left the bustling city center behind and rode towards the rundown neighborhood on the outskirts. When I moved out of the Vance house in middle school, I didn't have much money, so I could only afford to rent an old place here. I got used to it and never moved. Just as I was about to turn onto my street, an elderly woman in her 80s or 90s suddenly darted out from the roadside. I slammed on the brakes, nearly hitting her. I initially thought it was a scam, but I quickly realized something was off. The woman was thin and small, but she was well-dressed and didn't look like she was from an ordinary family. Around her neck was a tag with a phone number and a note at the bottom. If this person is found, please call this number. A generous reward will be offered. Alzheimer's, just as I thought. I wondered whose grandmother had gotten lost. I immediately took out my phone and dialed the number on the tag. The dazed old woman in front of me suddenly reacted, grabbing my wrist. A light appeared in her cloudy eyes. Grandson-in-law. You're my grandson-in-law. My mouth twitched. I've been single for 22 years. How did I get another wife? Was the courthouse having a 2-for-1 special today? I found it amusing and asked casually, "Ma'am, who is your granddaughter?" The old woman frowned in thought. My granddaughter's name is, "Oh, right, Chloe." She started to say, "Her name is Chloe." Chloe, what was it again? The name she had just remembered was gone the moment she tried to say it. She grew anxious, her mouth opening and closing, but she couldn't get the words out. "Ma'am, don't worry, it's okay if you can't remember." I soothed her and then made the call. At that moment, on a nearby street, Chloe Sterling was sitting in her Bentley. Her face was dark, and her subordinate, Laura, next to her, didn't dare to breathe. It was my negligence. I let the madam wander off. Chloe didn't speak, a cold aura radiating from her. Her grandmother was usually in a daze. Who would have thought she'd have a moment of clarity today? Send everyone away and sneak out? They had checked the security footage and discovered she had taken a bus by herself to this suburban area. This part of town was older, and many streets didn't have security cameras, so they had to conduct a grid search. Just then, her phone rang. Chloe answered immediately, and a calm male voice came from the other end. "Hello, I have your grandmother with me." The atmosphere in the car instantly froze, the air dropping several degrees. Everyone sprang into action. Someone prepared to call the police, while Laura began tracing the call's signal. Chloe's eyes were sharp, her voice frigid. "How much do you want?" "Just kidding." The young man's voice sounded a bit cheeky. "Just wanted to tell you to take better care of her in the future." Then, I gave him my address and hung up. Laura let out a sigh of relief. This good Samaritan was quite the prankster. Chloe, however, raised her eyes slightly. She suddenly felt that the lazy voice on the phone sounded a little familiar. 5 minutes later, they arrived at the location, but the young man who had called was long gone. Only a police officer was there, waiting with the old woman. Chloe asked, "Grandma, how did you end up here?" The old woman said mysteriously, "I came to find my grandson-in-law. He lives around here." Chloe paused, then sighed. "Grandma, there is no grandson-in-law." "Impossible. I saw him," the old woman insisted, then complained. "That heartless boy, he just handed me over to the police and left. By the way, give me your phone." Chloe handed her the phone, and the old woman copied the number from the recent call log into her little notebook. She finally had her grandson-in-law's contact information. The next morning, I received a call from my university advisor. As soon as I walked into Professor Liang's office, I saw Brandon and Linda were there too. I narrowed my eyes. Brandon and I both attended Seacrest University, the best in the region. Brandon got in with excellent grades. I, on the other hand, had started a company and couldn't manage it remotely, plus I couldn't outshine Brandon, so I deliberately aimed for the minimum score and chose the least popular major, energy and power engineering. But unexpectedly, the concept of new energy suddenly became a hot topic 2 years ago, and Brandon immediately switched his major, becoming my classmate again. It was normal for Brandon to be here, but why was Linda? Just as I had that thought, Professor Liang said with a grave expression, "Ethan, your graduate school recommendation has been revoked." While I was still processing this, my advisor continued, "Your mother said you have poor character and an improper background, making you ineligible for the recommendation. Is there some misunderstanding between you two? You should apologize to her quickly. You have a bright future, Don't let a moment of anger ruin it. Hearing this, Brandon sighed. Professor Leong, Ethan's mother is just trying to do what's best for him. He looked at me. You offended Miss Sterling, and she's put the word out that she wants you to disappear from Seacrest City. Took me a moment to realize he meant Chloe Sterling, but I had only exchanged a few words with her, and she didn't seem angry when she left yesterday. Brandon, on the other hand, was a habitual liar. While I was thinking, Brandon walked up to me. Ethan, Dad bought you a plane ticket. He wants you to go abroad for a while to lay low. Otherwise, even the Vance family can't protect you. A flash of ridicule appeared in my eyes. Weren't they just afraid I would drag the family down with me? Seeing that I didn't take it, Brandon pulled out a bank card, feigning sincerity. Are you worried about supporting yourself abroad? Here's $50,000. Consider it living expenses from me personally. Use it for now, and if it's not enough, I'll give you more when I get my allowance. The great young master of the Vance family only had $50,000? I found it laughable. Just then, Linda snatched the card from Brandon's hand. Brandon, what are you doing? The family buying him a plane ticket is already more than generous. She looked at me and commanded, pack your things and leave the country immediately. I've already processed your withdrawal from the university. I looked at her coldly. What gives you the right to make decisions for me? Because I'm your mother. Besides, with your grades, you'd be lucky to even graduate. You're better off getting a job and earning money sooner. Professor Leong immediately interjected. Mrs. Reed, you're mistaken. During his time here, Ethan has. Before he could finish, Linda cut him off. Professor, you don't need to speak up for him. Do you think I don't know what he's like? He only wants to go to grad school because Brandon is. He should take a good look in the mirror and see what he is. What right does he have to compare himself to Brandon? Professor Leong was taken aback, then looked at Brandon in surprise. I don't recall you getting a recommendation or taking the entrance exam. Brandon smiled modestly. I'm being specially admitted. If a professor holds a student in particularly high regard, they can personally recruit them, provided they are a renowned academic. When the professor asked which academic it was, Brandon put on a humble act. It's Drive North. His research on clean hydrogen fuel was successful. He filed a patent and was awarded an honorary doctorate for it. Hearing this, I looked at him with some surprise. Drive North? Since when was I planning to specially admit Brandon? Professor Leong also exclaimed, You know Drive North? Brandon smiled faintly. It's quite a story. My mother sponsored his education years ago, so after he became successful, he sought out our family, saying my mother was his savior. He's been providing technical support to our family's company all these years, so he probably wouldn't refuse any request from me. I raised an eyebrow. Growing up in the Vance household, I only survived thanks to Mrs. Vance's care. So, once I was capable, I contacted her under the alias Drive North. I had fabricated the story of being sponsored to have a reason to repay her for raising me. For years, I had provided free technical assistance for any issues with the companies under her name. But since when was I at Brandon's beck and call? He was really exaggerating. Professor Leong, however, believed him. Which university is Drive North affiliated with now? Brandon replied, I promised the dean I would invite Drive North to teach at our university. Professor Leong was overjoyed, then turned to me. Ethan, your research area is the same as Drive North's. I'll introduce you to him. If Drive North is willing to speak for you, there might still be a chance for your recommendation. Brandon put on a worried expression. Professor Leong, is that a good idea? The Sterlings are the wealthiest family in Seacrest City. They donate a lot of research funding to our school every year. Professor Leong was unconcerned. Drive North is in high demand right now. I heard Harvard and Oxford have both extended offers to him, and many companies want to invest in his work. If Drive North is willing to step in, the university will definitely side with him. Brandon sighed theatrically. But Drive North is doing this as a favor to my mother. If it were for me, he would certainly do everything he could to help. But Ethan is my father's illegitimate son, which puts him at odds with my mother. Ethan, how about I go ask Drive North for you? Hearing this, I flatly refused. At this moment, Brandon looked like a pathetic clown. A small smile played on my lips as I said directly to Professor Leong, Professor, you know I never really wanted to go to grad school anyway. Professor Leong looked stunned, his face filled with regret. He was the one who had discovered my talent in the field and insisted on my recommendation. He never imagined things would turn out this way. His eyes reddened slightly. Then I'll write you a letter of recommendation for a job. Linda scoffed, don't waste your time. After offending Miss Sterling, he thinks he can find a job in Seacrest City? In his dreams. Professor Leong was furious. I don't believe it. Is there really someone who can control everything in this city? If you really can't find a job, you can come be my teaching assistant. A wave of warmth washed over me. I explained, Professor, it's just a small misunderstanding between Miss Sterling and me. Once it's cleared up, everything will be fine. You don't need to worry. Brandon, however, clenched his fists. He couldn't understand why Professor Leong, despite him being the top student, only valued the mediocre Ethan. Brandon was seething with anger. He glanced at Linda and said, Ethan, are you going to keep harassing Miss Sterling? She's already married. This really isn't right. As expected, Linda flew into a rage and slapped me hard across the face. I stared at Linda in disbelief, shocked that she would hit me right in front of Professor Leong. Linda showed no remorse, pointing at my nose and yelling, It's been a few years. I see you've forgotten the rules of this house. Apologize to your brother right now and promise you'll never go near the Sterlings again. The warmth in my eyes slowly faded, leaving only an icy chill. It seemed she hadn't taken what I said about the last time to heart at all. Did she still see me as that submissive, ignorant boy who always put Brandon first? Since reasoning with her was pointless, she couldn't blame me for being ruthless. Brandon watched from the side, a sense of triumph rising within him. As children, I had been utterly subservient to him, never talking back when he scolded me, never fighting back when he hit me. After I moved out, we met again in college. I was still the same poor kid, but I now stood up straight in front of him. Had a few years without a beating made me forget my place? Today, he would let Linda remind me. Just as Brandon had this thought, he saw me slowly walk up to him. As a smirk formed on his lips, thinking I was about to apologize, I suddenly looked up and threw a hard punch right at his face. Brandon's head spun, and he was completely dazed by the blow. Linda roared and charged at me. Ethan Vance, how dare you? I whipped my head around, a murderous aura emanating from me. Linda froze, stunned by my expression. What are you doing? You ungrateful brat. I'm your mother. Are you going to hit me too? My voice was ice cold as I spoke, word by word. You were never a mother to me, so don't expect me to be a son to you. Don't you ever try to control my life again. Otherwise, whatever you do to me from now on, I will repay it to Brandon, twofold. I looked away from her and bowed deeply to Professor Leong, thanking him for his care over the past 4 years and promising to return once my affairs were settled. With that, I turned and left without hesitation. It wasn't until I was completely out of sight that Linda slowly came back to her senses. Just as I walked out of the campus gates, I got a call from Jessica. Boss, I've figured it out. I know why Chloe Sterling claims to be married but doesn't know you. The Sterling family looks glamorous on the surface, but there's been intense internal strife for years. The old man favors the eldest son's family and wanted to hand control to them, so Chloe, as the youngest daughter, was always suppressed. A few years ago, he tried to force her into an arranged marriage with a few unsuitable candidates. It caused a huge uproar, which only ended when Chloe announced she had already married a man from an ordinary family. And get this, her supposed husband is quite the character. He's never appeared in public or attended any Sterling family events. So, in conclusion, there can only be one truth, which is, Jessica drew out the suspense, but before she could finish, I already understood. Have you found her schedule and contact info? Jessica was a bit taken aback, then said sheepishly, I'll send you her schedule for the next few days shortly. I couldn't get her personal number. No problem, I'll go find her. For someone of Chloe's status, a private number would be top secret. It was normal that it couldn't be found. Jessica immediately got gossipy. She's surrounded by bodyguards. You can't just walk up to her. Are you planning to use force? Or, let's keep it low-key for now. A roguish smile played on my lips. At the entrance of Sterling Corp, I straightened my delivery driver uniform, held a package, and walked in. I told the receptionist, this is a delivery for Miss Sterling. It requires her personal signature. The receptionist made a call to the executive office before allowing me to go up. I took the private elevator to the 88th floor. Stepping out, the space opened up before me. The entire executive support department, over 100 people, worked here, all dedicated to serving Chloe Sterling alone. I followed the secretary who came to meet me and soon arrived at the CEO's office. I knocked on the door, and a pleasant voice from inside said, Come in. Just as I thought I was about to meet Chloe, a figure suddenly blocked my way. Her executive assistant, Laura, frowned as she looked me over. Mr. Vance? What are you doing here? Laura looked displeased. She remembered me harassing Chloe at the Vance house yesterday. Chloe hadn't made a big deal out of it, but today I had the audacity to push my luck, showing up disguised as a delivery driver to bother her again. She waved over 2 bodyguards. What's going on? Are we letting any random person up to the top floor without checking their ID now? Get him out of here immediately. My expression remained calm. What do you mean by that? Does Sterling Corp look down on delivery drivers? Laura sneered. Nice try turning this around on me. We respect every profession, but are you really a delivery driver? Do you have an ID to prove it? As soon as she said that, an ID card was thrust in her face. I smiled wryly. As a matter of fact, I do. Her face stiffened. Then, a thought occurred to her, and she scoffed. You didn't just sign up today, did you? The ID was opened, revealing the registration date. Laura was stunned. 8 years ago? You're actually a real delivery driver. Can't a guy work his way through school? I said in a lazy tone, speaking towards the door. Miss Sterling, are you ready to cooperate with my work now? A pleasant voice came from inside the room. Let him in. I shot Laura a provocative glance, and seeing she was about to explode, I walked past her and into the office. Chloe's office was decorated in a minimalist luxury style, with a black, white, and gray color scheme that made the space feel devoid of any warmth. After signing the document in her hand, Chloe finally looked up, her bright eyes betraying no emotion. I pointed to the delivery slip. Miss Sterling, please sign here. Her gaze lingered on me for a second before she took the pen and signed. Just then, I suddenly spoke, my words startling. Miss Sterling, the truth is, you're not married at all, are you? The tip of her pen paused. She snapped her head up, her icy gaze locking onto me. I knew I had guessed correctly. The courthouse requires personal information to be filled out first during registration, so a mistake is highly unlikely. Chloe claimed to be married, yet she didn't know me at all. Combined with Jessica's investigation, there was only one possible truth. Chloe had invented a fake husband to deal with her family's pressure to get married. She had never actually been to the courthouse, which is why she didn't know we were legally married. I said seriously, Miss Sterling, I know this sounds unbelievable, but we are really married. Chloe slowly sat up straight, a playful look on her face. Mr. Vance, don't waste your energy. Even if I were single, I would never marry you just to spite Stella. I was taken aback. She knew about my history with Stella and thought I was approaching her for revenge, which was why she didn't believe me. I quickly explained, I'm not here because of Stella. I want to divorce you. I'm not interested in your romantic drama. Chloe cut me off, quickly signed the slip, and handed it to me. Don't bother me again, or I won't be so polite. Hearing that, I started to get annoyed too. You haven't been polite to me at all. You're the one who said you wanted me to disappear from Seacrest City. Chloe frowned. When did I? Before she could finish, her phone rang with the special ringtone she had set for her grandmother. She answered immediately, and a caregiver's voice came through. Miss Sterling, the madam is missing again. Chloe hurriedly rushed out the door. I wanted to chase after her to clear things up, but Laura blocked me again. Mr. Vance, I suggest you stop here. I sighed, was escorted out of Sterling Corp, and slowly made my way home. Just as I reached my front door, I suddenly turned around and saw the same old woman from before, tiptoeing furtively behind me. I looked on helplessly, and just as I was about to speak, she grabbed my wrist. Grandson-in-law, you're not getting rid of me this time. Inside my rented apartment, the old woman sat at the dining table and drank 3 glasses of water in a row. I frowned and said seriously, I'm really not your grandson-in-law. Yes, you are. The little old lady was stubborn, and she chugged another glass of water. I knew it was pointless to argue with her, so I took out my phone and dialed the number from before. It was answered after just one ring. Hello. The woman's voice sounded vaguely familiar, but before I could say anything, the old woman snatched the phone from my hand. At that moment, Chloe was leading a search party nearby. She appeared calm, but inside, she was anxious. Her grandmother didn't just have Alzheimer's. At 87, her body was failing, and her life could be in danger at any moment. The moment her phone rang, she answered it, only to hear her grandmother's robust voice. You brat, don't come get me. I'm with my grandson-in-law. Grandson-in-law. The call was from the same number as last time, so her grandmother was with that young man again? Chloe's face darkened as she asked, Where are you? I'm not telling you. You think I can't find you if you don't tell me? You're not allowed to come looking for me. And don't you dare send anyone to track me. Chloe ran a hand through her hair, covered the mouthpiece, and whispered to the doctor, Given her condition, can we bring her back by force? The doctor shook his head and replied softly, She can't be agitated right now. It's best to go along with her wishes. And that young man from last time didn't seem like a bad person. With a helpless expression, Chloe tried to coax her over the phone. Grandma, I at least need to bring you your medicine. Don't need to. I have it with me. Don't you worry. Just wait patiently for me to bring your grandson-in-law home." With that, the little old lady hung up. She handed the phone back to me, looking triumphant. Grandson-in-law all settled. I was completely bewildered. What kind of irresponsible family was this? Just leaving an elderly woman with a total stranger? Just as I was about to call back, my iMessage pinged. Someone had sent me a friend request via my phone number with the message, "Grandmother's granddaughter." I accepted, and she quickly sent a message. "Please take care of my grandmother for a while. She's not well recently and can't be stressed." I scoffed and started typing a cold reply. "Not convenient. This isn't a charity." Before I could finish, I heard a noise from the kitchen. I rushed over and saw the old woman boiling an egg. I asked casually, "Hungry? You can't just eat an egg." The little old lady turned around, her wrinkled face breaking into a kind smile. "Grandson-in-law, you can use this egg on your face to reduce the swelling." I froze. I hadn't even realized it myself, but after being hit by my own mother today, I had been carrying a detached coldness around me, separating me from the world, even though I acted like it didn't bother me. In that moment, her words melted away my chill, and a warmth returned to my eyes. I looked back at my phone and saw a bright orange notification in the chat with the granddaughter. "You have received a transfer of $300,000. The note read, "This is for a week's expenses. Let me know if you need more." I looked at what I had been typing and edited my message. Fine. I didn't understand why I was suddenly getting involved in this. It must be because she offered too much money, I thought. Back at the Vance house, Brandon's cheek was swollen, the imprint of my fist clearly visible. Linda kept her head down. "That little bastard Ethan. He must be jealous that you're marrying Miss Sterling. When your father gets back, we'll have him teach him a harsh lesson." Mrs. Eleanor Vance, despite her illness, came downstairs. Her voice was weak, but her tone was firm. "Ethan isn't like that. You must have done something to provoke him first." Seeing her, Brandon, though resentful, changed the subject. "Mom, could you invite Drive North to be a guest professor at Seacrest University?" Mrs. Vance immediately refused. "Brandon, you can't take advantage of someone's kindness. Besides, Drive North has done more than enough for the family company over the years." Brandon wasn't surprised. Seacrest University is the best university around here. Maybe Drive North would want to go himself? We could help connect him with the school. It would be a way of repaying him for all his help over the years. Mrs. Vance found his reasoning plausible, so she took out her phone and opened iMessage. "All right, I'll ask him." Brandon sat beside her. "Drive North has done so much for our family. Any debt has long been repaid. Shouldn't we host a dinner for him to show our appreciation? You could ask him in person then. Wouldn't that be better?" Drive North never refused Mrs. Vance. If he came and Brandon then asked to be his graduate student, he surely wouldn't say no. Mrs. Vance was convinced. She sent a message to Drive North on iMessage. "Young North, would you have time to visit us at home?" My heart leaped into my throat when I saw the message. Why would Mrs. Vance suddenly want to meet? Was her health getting worse? Remembering her cough, I grew anxious, stood up, and started to head out, typing, "I'm free. I can come over now." But just as I was about to rush out, another message from her arrived. "No need to come now. Do you work on Saturdays? I'd like to treat you to a simple meal." I realized I had overreacted out of concern. But dinner at the Vance house? A bitter smile touched my lips. When I moved out 10 years ago, I went back on the first weekend. I entered the yard and, through the window, saw Mrs. Vance, Brandon, and Walter laughing and talking together. Mrs. Vance had a bright smile on her face, one I had never seen before. Linda had said, "See, without you, they're a real family. If you truly care for Mrs. Vance, you'll stay away and not disturb her again." I ended up leaving quietly, and after that, I only ever came back on Mrs. Vance's birthday each year to leave a small gift at the door. After all these years, it was probably time we met face to face. So I replied to her message, "I should be the one treating you. Saturday at 6 p.m., I'll be there." Then I sent her the location of a restaurant. Mrs. Vance happily agreed. Going to the Vance house would only stir up unnecessary arguments, so meeting outside was better. I could talk with her in peace and also get a chance to check on her condition. I closed my chat with Mrs. Vance and noticed a few new messages from the granddaughter, containing instructions for taking care of her grandmother. After reading them, I tiptoed into the spare bedroom and recorded a short video for her. On a nearby street, two discreet, fully equipped luxury vans were parked. Inside one, Chloe was sitting on a sofa, working on her laptop. Suddenly, an iMessage notification sounded. She picked up her phone, and a rare look of surprise crossed her usually stoic face. The family doctor immediately asked, Is something wrong with the madam? Chloe pursed her lips and showed her the video. It showed the old woman sprawled out on a bed with floral sheets, fast asleep and even snoring softly. It was only 9 in the evening. Normally, they considered it a blessing if she fell asleep before 1 a.m. The family doctor was astonished. The madam is truly different with this young man. If he could stay with her, I'm certain her condition would improve. Chloe's gaze deepened, as if she was lost in thought. The next morning, I got a message from her. As we exchanged messages, Chloe started to feel a comfortable familiarity, as if she were talking to an old friend. She suddenly asked, "Can I come see my grandmother tonight?" "Of course. You're welcome anytime," I replied, and then sent her the exact address. Chloe saved the address. "Thank you. I won't impose for long." She had to bring the family doctor to check on her grandmother tonight. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to rest easy. Chloe noticed I didn't reply again and got the feeling that I wasn't fond of such formalities. At that moment, I was waiting outside, bored, when I heard a familiar voice. I turned my head and came face to face with someone I knew, Stella Sterling. The face I remembered as always being gentle and kind was now looking at me with a dark expression. In college, I was always a loner, a lone wolf. Stella was warm and outgoing, constantly by my side, and she was pretty much my only friend. But now, things between us were awkward. I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Can I help you?" Stella sneered. "Brandon told me about your background. Why did you hide it? I hate mistresses and illegitimate children more than anything, yet I chased someone like you for 4 years like an idiot. Was it fun for you?" My heart suddenly felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand. Her own parents had a troubled marriage, and there were rumors of an illegitimate daughter. All Brandon had to do was reveal my status, and 4 years of friendship were shattered. I took a step back, putting some distance between us. But Stella stepped forward, demanding, "Don't you have anything to say for yourself? Explain what? Explain why I'm an illegitimate son? Or why I chose to be born from Linda Reed's womb?" I let out a sarcastic laugh. "No." With that, I turned to leave. We were on different paths now. If she looked down on my origins, then there was no point in being friends. My decisive manner seemed to agitate Stella. Seeing me walk further away, she panicked and, without thinking, grabbed my wrist. "You can't go." I turned back to look at her. "What else is there?" Stella's face was tense. My distant, cold demeanor struck her as heartless, and a surge of anger mixed with a strange sense of grievance rose within her. She was the one who had let go first, so why did it feel like I was the one abandoning her? As she was thinking this, her tone turned mocking. "You're still working odd jobs here, which means you haven't found a real career yet, right? Why don't you come be my personal assistant?" I pulled my arm free from her grasp and coldly refused. "I'm afraid I'm not qualified." But Stella persisted. "You wouldn't have to do much. I have an apartment near my office. You just live there and take care of my daily needs. I'll pay you $50,000 a month. Is that enough?" My gaze turned icy. "Are you asking me to be your kept man?" Stella scoffed. "You'd be perfect for the role, wouldn't you? After all, your mother is a mistress. You must have learned a thing or two growing up. It's in your blood. I'm sure you'd be a professional." At that, I shoved her to the ground and looked down at her coldly. "That's enough." But when she got up, she wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled, her eyes filled with a dark obsession. "Ethan Vance, believe it or not, you'll end up as someone's plaything eventually. If that's the case, why not choose me? At least, for old time's sake, I'll be gentle with you. I'll give you time to think about it. Come find me whenever you change your mind." After saying her piece, Stella left. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, but as I turned, I suddenly saw Chloe standing at the door of a private room. Chloe disliked social events and had finally found an excuse to leave with Laura. But just as they stepped out, they witnessed the scene that had just unfolded down the hall. Chloe's expression was unreadable, her gaze deep. Laura, however, clicked her tongue at me. "I knew it. The reason you never got a stable job after college and kept working all these part-time gigs is because Stella Sterling has been hounding you." I was completely confused by her statement. Laura sighed again. "So that's why you had no choice but to come bother my boss before. After all, there's almost no one in Seacrest City who dares to go against the Sterling family." I narrowed my eyes but didn't argue. In the past 2 days, this was the first time we had spoken calmly. Laura said sympathetically, "Boss, maybe we should help him out. He's in a tough spot." I felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, help the poor kid out. Come with me to the courthouse and sign some divorce papers. My company is waiting to go public." But just as I had that thought, I heard Chloe say coldly, "Why should I displease Stella for the sake of someone inconsequential?" With that, she strode past me. "Poor kid? The eyes she saw in me held not a trace of pity, but an irrepressible cunning and delight. He wasn't pitiful, he was infuriating. Besides, the fact that I had managed to get her personal schedule proved I was resourceful. I sighed. With the old woman at my place, I couldn't stay out for long. I tried to find her again tomorrow. That evening, Chloe left work on time and drove to the old neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Carrying a bag of fruit, she found the apartment using the address from iMessage and knocked on the door. A familiar voice soon called out from inside, "Coming, coming!" The door opened, and Chloe saw her grandmother, who looked quite healthy. She then took in her surroundings. The small two-bedroom apartment, though only about 650 square feet, was neat and cozy. Just then, she heard the sound of running water from the bathroom. Was he taking a shower? Chloe quickly averted her gaze, feeling a jolt of awkwardness. The family doctor, who was behind her, was about to enter when Chloe stopped her. "Give me the equipment. You can wait in the car." Chloe quickly and efficiently checked her grandmother's blood pressure, blood sugar, and heart rate. Perhaps because the old woman had slept well the night before, all her readings were perfectly healthy. The old lady said proudly, "My grandson-in-law takes wonderful care of me." Seeing was believing, and Chloe finally felt relieved. She glanced towards the bathroom again, then packed up the medical equipment. "Since you're doing well, I'll be going now." The old woman was surprised. "You're not staying for dinner? My grandson-in-law is an amazing cook." "It's not convenient." Chloe put the diagnostic tools down. "I'll leave this here." The old woman's eyes darted around. "Take it with you. My grandson-in-law doesn't know how to use it, and I don't want Dr. Fong to come here. I want you to come check on me every day." If her granddaughter came every day, she would have to see her grandson-in-law, right? They could build their relationship and finally end their separation. The old woman felt her future great-grandchild waving at her. Just as Chloe was about to say something, the sound of water from the bathroom stopped. She immediately stood up, grabbed her medical kit, and rushed out the door. "I have to go now. Come back tomorrow." The moment the door closed, I walked out of the bathroom, fully dressed. "Where's your granddaughter?" "She left. Said it wasn't convenient. She's just too proper and always has a serious look on her face." "Grandson-in-law, is that why you don't like her? She can change, you know." "I'm not your grandson-in-law." "Yes, you are." I felt a wave of helplessness. Over the past couple of days, I had found the old woman to be very kind and agreeable about everything, except for this one stubborn point. A few days later, the old woman suddenly announced she wanted to go home to get some clothes, so I messaged her granddaughter for the address. But when I opened the location she sent, I froze. Number 1 Manor. Wasn't that the Sterling estate? The entire community was 3,000 acres, with the Sterling family mansion alone occupying over 2,000. It was the most famous wealthy enclave in Seacrest City. I had assumed the old woman lived in one of the smaller villas. I never dared to imagine she was from the main Sterling family. But when we arrived, I looked up at the imposing, antique-style black gate with its intricate carvings and asked hesitantly, "Grandma, is this your house?" The old woman, drowsy and dazed, replied, "Grandson-in-law, I can't remember." Helpless, I had no choice but to message her granddaughter. She replied immediately, "Wait right where you are, I'm on my way." As we had driven up, I noticed that even the nearest neighbor was a 5-minute drive away. This was definitely not a place to wander around. I helped the old woman sit on a nearby stone bench. Suddenly, a luxury car pulled up in front of us, and Brandon and Linda got out of the back, rushing towards us. Linda's brow was furrowed in a tight knot as she scolded, "Ethan Vance, I knew it was you. What are you doing here?" She had come with Brandon to visit the Sterlings today, posing as a nanny, and had seen a young man lingering in front of the gate from a distance. She never imagined it would actually be me. Brandon looked at the closed gates of the Sterling estate. "Ethan, are you here to bother Miss Chloe Sterling again?" At his words, Linda roared, "You animal, don't you know what day it is? Get lost now. If you ruin Brandon's formal visit, I'll make you pay." I was sick and tired of them, but with the old woman here, I didn't want to start a fight. So I suppressed my annoyance and explained, "I was taking this lady home and got lost." Brandon blurted out, "Isn't that your wife's grandmother? How could she possibly live in this neighborhood?" I retorted, "Why not? Do you own this community?" Brandon was speechless. Linda, however, started yelling at me, "Stop pretending, as if your broke wife's grandmother could afford to live here." She turned to the old woman. "You old hag, tell me then, which villa do you live in?" I frowned at her words and was about to intervene, but the old woman suddenly stood up. "I remember now. I live right here. Grandson-in-law, let's go home." She grabbed my hand and started walking towards the Sterling's main gate. We were still 100 yards away, but after just a few steps, Brandon spoke up. Ethan, after all your excuses, you're still just using this old woman as a shield to get into the Sterling's house, aren't you? I stopped in my tracks and stared at the Sterling estate ahead. Although a suspicion had formed in my mind when I first saw the magnificent gate, I couldn't reconcile the polite granddaughter from iMessage with the cold and ruthless Chloe Sterling. Maybe the old woman was mistaken. Just as I was about to double-check, Linda lunged forward, reaching for the old woman. You little bastard, making up lies to freeload off of them. You have no shame. I won't let you cause trouble for the Sterlings. I was startled. I shielded the old woman with one arm and grabbed Linda with the other, pushing her away forcefully. What are you doing? She's an old woman. You can't just shove her like that. Linda stumbled backward. Once she regained her balance, she immediately started screaming, You ungrateful monster. You hit your own mother for this old hag. I'm going to call the police and report you for being an unfilial son. I ignored her and quickly turned to the old woman. She had probably never been yelled at like that in her life, and she was trembling with anger. She clutched her chest, her body shaking uncontrollably, and then she started to collapse. I caught her just in time and immediately reached into her pocket for her heart medication. But when I opened the bottle, it was empty. My pupils contracted. The old woman was frail. CPR was a last resort and could be dangerous for her. Medication was the best option. I looked desperately at the gate. The Sterlings must have medicine. Even if she wasn't a Sterling, she was their neighbor. They wouldn't just let someone die on their doorstep. I picked up the old woman. Grandma, don't be afraid. I'll get you your medicine. But Brandon grabbed my arm tightly. Ethan, don't do this. The Sterlings won't let you in. He glanced at the old woman, a dark look in his eyes. She looked terrible. It seemed she was really in trouble. If she died right here, Ethan's wife would surely hate him forever. I felt a surge of pure rage. My eyes burned with fury, and I kicked him to the ground. But the next moment, my leg was grabbed. Linda was sitting on the ground, shamelessly clinging to me with all her might. You think you're the only one who can play the victim? I can do it too. I'm dying. My own son is killing me. I'll die right here before I let this little bastard scam the Sterlings. I was shaking with anger, but with the old woman in my arms, I couldn't break free. Just then, a black Bentley pulled up. Chloe got out and demanded sharply, What are you all doing? Brandon scrambled to his feet. Miss Sterling, it's Ethan. He's trying to bring this dying old woman to your house to cause a scene. It's my fault. I couldn't stop him. Hearing this, I slowly turned around. When she saw that it was her grandmother I was holding, Chloe's pupils constricted, and she strode towards us. She appeared calm, but inside, she was terrified. Her grandmother was the closest person she had in the world. Her health had been declining for years, and the family doctor had already hinted that she might not make it through the year. She couldn't lose her. Seeing her approach, I had already guessed the truth, but this wasn't the time to discuss it. I said quickly, She's having a heart attack, and she just ran out of her medication. She'll be fine if she gets it in time. Chloe pressed her lips together, took her grandmother from my arms, and rushed into the estate without a backward glance. I didn't follow because Linda was still clinging to my leg. Brandon watched Chloe's retreating back with a puzzled expression, a sudden, intense unease washing over him. That couldn't really be the Sterling matriarch, could it? How could she possibly be with Ethan Vance? She was supposed to be Ethan's wife's grandmother. Linda let go of me, stood up, and dusted herself off. Miss Sterling was so nervous probably because she was afraid someone would actually die. Then the Sterlings would be accused of standing by and doing nothing, which would look bad for them. She shot me a harsh glare. Isn't that what I was counting on when I charged at the gate with the little bastard? Brandon frowned thoughtfully. That made sense. It wasn't like Ethan's street punk wife could be Chloe Sterling, right? He was overthinking things. Just then, the gate opened, and Stella Sterling walked out. Brandon's eyes lit up, and he smiled. Stella, you could have just waited for me in the parking lot. Why did you come all the way to the gate? Stella looked annoyed. Brandon had messaged her saying he was almost there but had too many gifts to carry, so he asked her to meet him. She had waited in the parking lot for a long time, and when he didn't show, she decided to walk out and see what was going on, only to spot me immediately. She paused for a moment, and then the impatience on her face vanished, replaced by a forced gentleness. She said to Brandon, Well, it's your first time visiting. I was worried you might get lost. Brandon ran up to her, beaming. Stella, you're the best. He asked tentatively, Is the old madam at home? Great-grandmother isn't well. She's been resting at home. The matriarch lived in a separate courtyard and didn't like to be disturbed. Stella's answer was an assumption, but Brandon took it as fact and finally relaxed completely. Stella stared at me brazenly, scrutinizing my face for any hint of jealousy, envy, or resentment. But all she found was a grim darkness. I was too worried about the old woman to pay any attention to their lovey-dovey act. By now, I was almost certain that the granddaughter was Chloe Sterling. I looked at the gate, wondering if I would be stopped if I tried to go in now. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. Stella was standing in front of me. "Ethan Vance," she said directly, "are you here to see me? Have you finally come to your senses?" I remained silent, my face dark. Stella sneered, her words dripping with venom. "If you'd come to your senses, you could have just called me. Who gave you permission to come to the Sterling estate? Do you think an illegitimate son like you can just walk through these gates? But if you really want to see inside, you can, as long as—" But before she could finish, Brandon interrupted her. "Stella, you've misunderstood. Ethan is waiting for his wife's grandmother. The old woman just had a heart attack, and Miss Chloe Sterling took her inside for emergency treatment." Stella was taken aback and mumbled, "What wife?" Brandon chuckled lightly. "That's right, I haven't had a chance to tell you. Ethan is married." Stella's eyes suddenly turned red, and she gritted her teeth. "Ethan Vance? Who is she?" She looked like she was catching a cheating lover. A hint of mockery appeared in my eyes. "Stella, who my wife is has nothing to do with you." Stella's voice shot up. "How is it none of my business? I'd like to see who dares to marry you without my permission." Brandon quickly chimed in. "According to Ethan's mother, she's some kind of street punk." Stella clenched her fists, her words lashing out. "So you'd stoop that low? Fine. An illegitimate son and a street punk. A match made in heaven." Brandon added more fuel to the fire. "Ethan must not be happy about it, right? That's why he's always bothering Miss Chloe Sterling." I let out a cold laugh. "Brandon, you call yourself the young master of the Vance family, but is your mind filled with nothing but sordid affairs? Is that all you can think about?" Brandon's face stiffened at my words. He clenched his fists and sighed. "I know you're doing this to get back at Stella and me, but Miss Chloe Sterling is already married. You shouldn't be trying to ruin someone else's marriage." Stella was furious when she heard this. She had been waiting for my call for the past 2 days, thinking that if I came to her begging, she might consider giving me a chance. But it turned out I had already moved on. The thought enraged her. "No wonder your wife's grandmother had a heart attack at my doorstep. You were here to see my aunt. Ethan Vance, you are shameless." She was fuming. She pointed at me and instructed the guards. "Did you get a good look? Remember this face. Don't let him set foot on this property ever again." Brandon lowered his head, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. When it came to the Sterling's front gate, Stella still had some say. But the next moment, the Sterling's head housekeeper walked out from the gate. Her gaze swept over everyone before she stopped in front of me. "Mr. Ethan Vance, Miss Chloe requests your presence inside." Brandon was stunned. Stella was dumbfounded. I, however, looked up at the guards with a half-smile. "So, can I go in now?" The guard glanced nervously at Stella, then opened the gate without hesitation. He knew who was really in charge at the Sterling estate. After I walked in, Stella and the others followed behind. Linda glared at me. "Miss Chloe probably just wants you to pick up your grandmother. Once you have her, you'd better have the sense to leave immediately. You animal, don't you dare dirty the Sterling's carpets." With that, they all entered the living room, and the first thing they saw was the Sterling matriarch, sitting upright in the seat of honor on the sofa. The old woman glared at them. "You wicked woman, who are you calling an animal?" The old woman was now dressed in elegant clothes, but she still looked pale. Chloe sat to her left, her expression as cold as ice. Linda stood frozen in place. Brandon's legs gave out, and he nearly fell, but Stella caught him just in time. Stella asked, puzzled, "What's wrong with you?" Brandon's hands were trembling. He was already marrying up into the Sterling family. Every elder here was someone he needed to impress. But he had managed to offend the matriarch before he even got through the door. He gave a bitter smile. "Ethan, why did you lie to us and say the old madam was your wife's grandmother? You made us disrespect her." I instantly felt several suspicious gazes fall on me. Linda quickly caught on. "You knew she had Alzheimer's, and you still dared to deceive her. What do you take the Sterling family for? Get on your knees and apologize right now." My eyes darkened. Were they trying to pin all the blame on me? A clever move by Brandon to clear his name. Smash! The old woman threw a teacup, hitting Linda squarely. Hot tea splashed all over her, but Linda didn't dare to scream. "You scoundrel!" the old woman shouted. "He is my grandson-in-law." Despite the searing pain, Linda insisted, "Madam, He's tricked you. I'm certain his wife is just a street punk. There's no need to argue. Why don't we just ask the person involved? Stella's mother spoke up from the side. Chloe, is he really your husband? I snapped my head towards Chloe, and then I heard the answer I had expected. No, what an ungrateful woman, repaying kindness with cruelty. A flash of anger crossed my eyes. Brandon, on the other hand, looked relieved, a smile spreading across his face. Linda sneered. I told you, this was all Ethan's doing. I let out a cold laugh and was about to speak when the woman's voice sounded again. My grandmother mistook him for someone else, so I asked Mr. Vance to help take care of her for a while. Everyone fell silent. No one had expected this turn of events. After a long moment, Brandon lowered his head. Oh, so that's how it is. Ethan, why didn't you tell us the truth? If you had said so earlier, this misunderstanding wouldn't have happened. Mr. Vance. Chloe leaned back on the sofa, her posture casual, but her words carried immense weight. Hiding behind others and shifting blame when things go wrong. Is this how the Vance family teaches its children? The old woman, spurred by Chloe's words, became furious. That's right. You think just because my mind is fuzzy, I can't see through your little tricks? You make a mistake, show no remorse, and then try to pin it on someone else. The two of you are shameless. The matriarch then looked directly at Stella. Call off the engagement. I will not acknowledge this great-grandson-in-law. Brandon froze. He had worked so hard for this marriage. He couldn't let it slip away. He looked to Stella for help, but she was just staring at me, dazed, clearly still reeling from the shock of my marriage. Brandon clenched his fists, lowered his head, and walked over to her. Stella, it's my fault. Don't worry. Even if the engagement is canceled, I'll still make the introduction I promised you. Stella snapped back to reality. Brandon was still going to introduce her to Drive North. In the country's current new energy sector, Drive North was one of the top figures. She quickly turned to the old woman. Great-grandmother, Brandon didn't know any better. Please, forgive him. Besides, our families have already exchanged the betrothal gifts. It wouldn't be right to call it off now. The old matriarch gave her a deep look. Do as you wish. She had always lived by a simple principle. A wise elder knows when to turn a deaf ear and a blind eye. Her great-granddaughter's affairs were for her parents to decide. She didn't want to meddle. But Stella's mother chimed in with a smile. Grandmother, have you forgotten the welcoming gift? Hearing this, the old woman's eyelids drooped. I'll have someone transfer $18,000 to Stella. Stella's mother's face stiffened. But, didn't you say before that you would give the young couple 2% of the company shares, in case they were tight on cash as newlyweds? If you had to name the wealthiest person in the Sterling family, it was undoubtedly the old matriarch. She came from a prominent family in the capital, had a substantial dowry of her own, and controlled 20% of the Sterling family's stock. Stella's mother had long planned to use this marriage to get a hefty sum from her. It had all been agreed upon, but now the old woman had changed her mind. The matriarch looked at her with a wry smile and said capriciously, I'm not satisfied with this great-grandson-in-law, so I'm not giving it. Brandon's face turned pale. He felt utterly humiliated. The Sterlings had many servants, and word would surely get out. Soon, all of Seacrest City would know that the old matriarch despised him. For these wealthy families, reputation was everything, and today, she had trampled his into the dust. But the old woman couldn't care less. After dropping that bombshell, she grabbed me, took Chloe, and led us to her private courtyard. Then, making an excuse, she asked Chloe to entertain her grandson-in-law and hurried off with her staff. In the blink of an eye, Chloe and I were left alone in the courtyard. The night was inky black as Chloe and I stood side by side. I was hesitating, unsure of what to say, when she suddenly looked at me, her brow furrowed with a hint of disdain. Your iMessage name is Needs More Iron? Not to be outdone, I looked at her seriously. Silly goose? Chloe's face darkened. He had managed to coax even that out of her grandmother. His intentions were clearly not pure. Her grandmother latching onto him might have been an accident, with no signs of premeditation. But his kindness in taking her in was probably because the old woman had inadvertently revealed who she was. I shot back a retort but didn't forget the real issue. I remember you said on iMessage you'd do me a favor. So, can you come with me to the courthouse to check on our marital status? Chloe's face was grim, and she snapped impatiently, Fine, let's go. But if this is all a lie, I expect you to stop using my grandmother to bother me. The old woman's head popped out of a window. You brat, are you bullying my grandson-in-law? Hearing this, Chloe's expression immediately stiffened. No, dinner was simple, just a few dishes and a soup, perfect for the three of us. But the old woman didn't have much of an appetite. After a few bites, she put down her chopsticks. Grandson-in-law, I'm tired. Let's go home. You should rest here tonight. Don't overexert yourself. This courtyard was like a miniature nursing home, fully equipped with all sorts of medical devices. But the old woman grabbed my hand nervously. Then, can you stay here with me? I frowned and glanced at Chloe. To be honest, I was worried about the old woman too, but this woman was so disdainful of me. Suspecting I was using her grandmother to get close to her, she would surely refuse. Chloe was silent for a moment. You can. Then she gave me a meaningful look, making it clear she was only doing this for her grandmother and I shouldn't get any ideas. My mouth twitched. The old woman was satisfied. Good. Wherever my grandson-in-law is, that's where I'll be. After dinner, I helped her to her room to rest. She must have been truly exhausted from the day's events and her health scare, because she fell into a deep sleep almost as soon as she lay down. She was sleeping restlessly, so I had no choice but to sit by her bedside. Outside the window, Chloe asked with a serious expression, "What's going on with Grandma?" The family doctor, who had studied some psychology, sighed. I don't know why she's so attached to this young man, but I have a guess as to why she's so anxious and afraid he'll leave. The doctor then glanced at Chloe. I think she feels she might not make it through the year. She's afraid that when she's gone, you'll have no one. He is the only person she can leave behind to be with you. Chloe froze, an uncontrollable storm of emotions swirling in her dark eyes before they finally settled back into calm. She stood in the moonlight, looking as if she might merge with the darkness behind her. After a long while, she suddenly turned and strode towards the main house. Dinner was an ordeal for Brandon. Because of him, the main branch of the family had lost out on 2% of the company's shares. Stella's mother, Amelia, was furious and her words were sharp. Isn't Ethan Vance your family's illegitimate son? How is it that he can charm the old matriarch, but you can't? Brandon could only lower his head and apologize. Aunt Amelia, I'm not as smooth-tongued as Ethan. Amelia scoffed. I don't care what you do. You have to get that 2% back. Otherwise, you can forget about marrying into this family. Brandon was miserable. After finally getting through the meal, he was ready to leave, but before he could, Chloe returned. The moment she walked in, an intense pressure filled the room. Her gaze was sharp as she scanned the leftovers on the table, her expression turning even darker. Her grandmother had barely eaten anything tonight, yet they were all here, feasting happily. Amelia saw her face and didn't dare to speak. It was Stella's father, Samuel Sterling, who frowned and asked, "Chloe, what brings you here?" Chloe ignored her nominal older brother and looked directly at Brandon. Since the engagement isn't off, he's considered part of the Sterling family now, correct? And as a member of this family, he must follow our rules. Today, he disrespected an elder. His punishment is to kneel in the ancestral hall for one night. Without waiting for a response, Chloe gestured behind her. 2 bodyguards stepped forward and stood in front of Brandon. "Mr. Vance, if you please." Brandon was dumbfounded. Kneel in the ancestral hall all night? Having been pampered his whole life, how could he possibly endure that? He looked to Stella for help, but she didn't dare to defy the family's true leader. He took a deep breath and had no choice but to follow the bodyguards. Just before he left, he heard Stella ask, "Aunt Chloe, what about Ethan Vance? Has he left?" Chloe's warning reply followed, "He is my guest. He's staying here tonight." Brandon followed the bodyguards to the ancestral hall, but one of them said, "Miss Sterling's orders. Since you are not yet married, you cannot enter the Sterling ancestral hall. You will kneel outside." The ground outside was paved with hard stone bricks. Brandon wanted to protest, but the 2 bodyguards stood with their hands behind their backs, staring at him coldly. "Mr. Vance, please." The October nights were already cold. Brandon shivered, a biting chill seeping into his bones through his knees. He thought about slacking off, but the 2 bodyguards watched him like sentinels, their silent presence more intimidating than any words. The thought of me, warm and comfortable in a soft bed at that very moment, made Brandon grind his teeth in hatred. But he only had to endure this for one night, while he would get to live in this house for the rest of his life. Besides, he was about to meet Drive North soon. He had to play that card right. When I woke up, I was lying in a bed with a small pink blanket draped over me, which clashed with the decor of the old woman's room. I didn't think much of it. After getting up and washing my face, I had breakfast with the old woman and Chloe. There was a plate of fried sweet pastries on the table, and the old woman immediately reached for one. Chloe frowned. "Grandma, your blood sugar is high. You shouldn't eat something so oily and sugary." Just as I was wondering how to stop her, I heard a calm voice say, "Grandma, that pastry isn't good for you." And then, the stubborn old woman, who usually ignored all medical advice when it came to food, changed the direction of her hand midair and placed the pastry in my bowl instead. The old woman smiled sweetly. "Grandson-in-law, this is for you." Chloe was a bit stunned. She looked at me scrutinizingly, unable to understand why her grandmother listened to me so readily. I started eating the pastry without hesitation, then looked at Chloe. "By the way, when we go to the courthouse later, you'll need to bring your ID and birth certificate." The old woman asked curiously, "Why are you two going to the courthouse?" "We lost our marriage certificate, so we're getting a replacement. We would need the certificate to get a divorce, so I wasn't actually lying to her." But to my surprise, the old woman piped up, "No, you didn't." She hurried into the bedroom and came back with 2 red marriage certificates, handing one to me and one to Chloe. I stared at the certificate in my hand, dumbfounded. It suddenly dawned on me. The old woman had called me grandson-in-law the very first time she saw me. She had known we were married all along. I felt like I was onto something and immediately asked, "Grandma, how did you get these marriage certificates?" The old woman looked startled, her eyes growing hazy. I don't remember." "Then how did Miss Sterling and I get married?" The old woman just shook her head. "I don't remember." I was getting anxious. "Grandma, please try to think." "That's enough," Chloe snapped, stepping between me and her grandmother. She looked at me with cold eyes. "Mr. Vance, is this certificate real? Are you going to say we don't need to go to the courthouse now? So this was your goal all along. First, you used the pretense of going to the courthouse to legitimize your harassment. Then you trick Grandma into producing this fake certificate to make her believe it's real. If I hadn't just seen how easily she listens to you, I might have almost believed it myself." I sensed a faint murderous intent in her tone and found it baffling. "We don't have to go today. A divorce isn't as simple as a trip to the courthouse anyway. We've been legally married for 2 years. There are a lot of asset division issues to sort out. We'll need to sign a separation agreement first." "No!" After Chloe said this, she stared at me intently, but I just looked slightly surprised and then said nonchalantly, "Whatever you want." Was his acting that good, or was he determined to see this through to the bitter end? Or was this marriage certificate actually real? Chloe suddenly felt uncertain. She picked up her marriage certificate and headed out the door. "I'll wait for you in the parking lot." I gave the old woman a reassuring smile. As soon as we reached the parking lot, we saw Linda, her face full of concern, supporting a pale and shivering Brandon. He was sneezing, and his legs were trembling. The moment Linda saw me, her eyes lit up. "Ethan," she hurried over, cautiously skirting around Chloe, and stood in front of me, saying with an air of entitlement, "You have to help your brother." I raised an eyebrow, wondering why they were here so early. Had they not left last night? I didn't say anything, so Linda launched into a long-winded speech. "Ethan, you're an illegitimate son, but the Vance family looked past that and raised you. Even if you don't consider their contributions, you should at least acknowledge their effort and repay them. Your brother was even better to you, letting you go to school with him and even sharing his clothes. And when you were born, you were so weak you almost didn't make it. I couldn't produce milk, so you survived by taking what was meant for your brother. The Vances weren't going to take us in at first, but because you and your brother were born on the same day, Mrs. Vance and your father let us stay. So you see, you owe your brother. You have to be good to him for the rest of your life." I hadn't heard this familiar tirade in 10 years. I thought about how, as a child, I had believed these lies and worked like a slave for the Vances, letting Brandon bully me however he pleased. Now, it all just seemed laughable. It was true the Vances had raised me, but parents are legally obligated to care for their children. If they had abandoned me, it would have been a crime. And yes, I went to school with Brandon, but I had to carry his backpack to and from school and act as his little follower. If he so much as coughed, it was my fault for not taking good care of him, and Linda would beat me. At school, I had to deliberately get the worst grades because I wasn't allowed to outshine him. As for clothes, my parents never bought me any. I could only wear Brandon's hand-me-downs, so my clothes were always too short. Mrs. Vance did buy me new clothes once, but Linda immediately took them off me and gave them to Brandon, saying I wasn't worthy and couldn't be more handsome than him. And as for being weak, what baby wouldn't be after being starved for days on end? The sarcasm in my eyes grew deeper, but Linda didn't notice. She finished her speech and immediately said, "Now that you're grown up, you finally have a chance to repay the Vance family. Ethan, the old Sterling matriarch listens to you, doesn't she? Go and convince her to give that 2% of shares back to your brother." I suddenly laughed. "You're right." Linda's face lit up, thinking she had persuaded me. But the next moment, I said lightly, "I'm just a lowly, illegitimate son. Why would the great Sterling matriarch ever listen to me?" Linda was stunned and wanted to say more, but I had already strode past her and gotten into Chloe's car. "Let's go." Chloe looked at me in the back seat and was about to say the driver hadn't arrived yet, but seeing Linda start to come after us, she got into the driver's seat herself, shut the door, slowly fastened her seatbelt, and then started the car and drove away. The black extended wheelbase Bentley drove smoothly down the road. Through the rearview mirror, Chloe could see me looking out the window, my handsome face calm and expressionless. She looked back at the road and continued driving, the warnings she had intended to give me left unsaid. Soon, we arrived at the courthouse. Just as we parked, Laura's voice came from outside the window. "Boss, the driver said you drove off by yourself. I got scared and tracked your location to find you. Is something wrong?" "No." Chloe was as concise as ever. Laura then looked at the courthouse. "What are you doing here? Don't tell me Ethan Vance has gotten you all paranoid? Don't worry. I told you he wouldn't be able to see you again, or else I'd eat crap on a live stream?" Before Laura could finish, a lazy male voice interrupted. She froze and slowly turned to look at the back seat, where she saw me looking at her with a mischievous glint in my eye. "What's your stream handle?" Laura was speechless. The three of us then entered the courthouse and went to the service window. Laura was the first to speak. "Hello, I'd like to ask, can someone get a marriage license without being present in person?" The clerk frowned. "Absolutely not. Did you hear that?" Laura looked at me mockingly. Then she saw the certificate in my hand and scoffed. "You even prepared a fake certificate? Ha! I'm calling the police right now to report you for forgery and harassment." But Chloe handed her own certificate to the clerk. "Could you please check if this is authentic?" The clerk gave her a strange look, took the certificate, and began typing the information into the computer. Chloe pressed her lips together, suddenly feeling that her actions were ridiculous. She was certain she had never gotten married, yet here she was, as if possessed, even missing an important meeting for this. The clerk quickly gave her an answer. "This certificate is real." Chloe was stunned. Hearing the clerk, Laura blurted out, "How is that possible? Did you enter the information incorrectly?" The clerk glared at her. "What are you talking about? Marriage is a serious matter. Both parties have to have their identities thoroughly verified and sign a declaration." When I heard declaration, I quickly spoke up. "Can we see our declaration? Please get the declaration for us," Chloe said at the same time. We looked at each other for a moment, then quickly looked away. The clerk stood up with a sigh. "You two are certainly in sync for a married couple. All right, I'll go get it for you." She returned shortly with our registration file and pulled out the declaration for us to see. I saw that the signature was indeed in my handwriting. Laura exclaimed from the side, "Boss, that's really your signature." I thought for a moment, then looked at the security cameras. "Excuse me, could we see the security footage from the day we registered?" "Sorry, we only keep recordings for 6 months. After that, the clerk repeatedly assured us that a marriage license could only be issued with both parties present and that their procedures were foolproof. The three of us finally left the courthouse, defeated. Standing at the entrance, Laura looked lost. "Boss, what do we do now?" Chloe's eyes darkened. I, however, raised an eyebrow. "Get a divorce." We both spoke at the same time again. Laura was taken aback, then asked, "So, you're getting divorced now? Do you need to discuss the terms?" "I'll have my lawyer contact you." "Talk to my lawyer." Chloe and I said it in unison once more. After we spoke, we couldn't help but look at each other. I chuckled and said, "Why don't we each have our lawyers draft an agreement for us to review first? If there are any issues, they can negotiate." Laura scoffed, "Someone like you can afford a lawyer?" But Chloe nodded in agreement. I ignored Laura and took out my phone. "Miss Sterling, let's exchange iMessage contacts to make it easier to communicate." Chloe paused, then took out her phone with a meaningful look and opened her QR code. I scanned it, and a chat window popped up on my phone, showing the contact name I had saved for her, Silly Granddaughter. Her face instantly darkened. I was a bit dazed myself. I seemed to have forgotten we were already contacts. Facing her scowl, I coughed. "That was just a random nickname I set. I'll change it." I covered my phone and quickly changed Silly Granddaughter to Silly Goose, then said, "See you around," and hailed a cab. Watching me leave, Laura looked at Chloe hesitantly. "Boss, are you two actually married?" They had been so in sync just now. Chloe glanced at her. "Find the best divorce lawyer. Draft an agreement that protects my assets." Laura immediately straightened up and agreed. Then something occurred to her. "I get it. This whole marriage thing must have been his scheme. Now that he knows he can't win your heart, he's decided to go after your money. No wonder he can afford a lawyer to fight you in court. Even if he only gets a tiny fraction, it'll be more than enough to cover the legal fees." Laura gritted her teeth in anger. "Don't worry, boss. I won't let him take a single penny from you. Meanwhile, in the taxi, I was on the phone with Jessica. Find the best divorce lawyer. I can't let her take a single penny of my money. No problem, Jessica said, her voice full of gossip. Boss, what's the real story with your marriage? Neither you nor Chloe Sterling remembers anything. You didn't both get amnesia, did you? What do you think this is? A novel? I'm just curious. So absurd and exciting. Maybe the courthouse will just assign me a husband one of these days. I sighed silently and, after a moment, said, there is one person who definitely knows what happened. The old Sterling matriarch? But didn't she say she can't remember? I frowned. We need to speed up the clinical trials for the Alzheimer's drug. We're running out of time. I soon arrived home. As I opened the door to my familiar apartment, I suddenly realized the small two-bedroom place felt a bit empty. Just then, the old woman walked in from the hallway, pulling a suitcase behind her. Grandson-in-law, you're back. I've been waiting for you. I brought lots of clothes this time. I paused for a moment, then broke into a smile. That same day, the most renowned divorce law firm in Seacrest City, and its most famous lawyer, received 2 separate requests to draft a divorce agreement. Both clients were anonymous, and both had the exact same demand. The other party was not to get a single penny of their money. The terms were incredibly harsh. An associate lawyer commented, I've seen a lot of divorces, but I've never seen one this ruthless. One client is the husband, the other is the wife. Men and women are equally heartless when they want to be. The senior lawyer had seen countless loving couples turn into bitter enemies. He had seen far worse than this. He chuckled. 2 fees for the work of 1 contract. Get it ready and send it to our clients. On the top floor of Sterling Corp., Chloe had been busy ever since she got back from the courthouse. It was almost the end of the workday when she received a call from home, informing her that her grandmother had gone to find her grandson-in-law again. Her grandmother needed daily health checks to monitor her vitals. She frowned slightly and instinctively opened iMessage, finding my contact, needs more iron. She wanted to type something but didn't know what to say. Ever since she found out that needs more iron was me, things had felt awkward. She scrolled through their chat history. Their previous conversations had been casual, like old friends. Especially that time she had helped him curse someone out. Wait a minute, the person I was cursing out at the restaurant that day. It couldn't have been her. Could it? Chloe's face instantly darkened again. Just then, her phone vibrated. It was a divorce agreement from me. Miss Sterling, the terms regarding asset division in this agreement are my bottom line. Please review it and see if it's acceptable. Asset division? Was this man really after her money, scheming this marriage all along? Just as Chloe opened the contract, the door opened and Laura walked in. Boss, I have the results of the investigation into your marriage. As soon as Laura finished speaking, Chloe had already opened the divorce agreement I sent on her computer. She quickly scanned the agreement, her eyes landing on the asset division clause. She was slightly surprised by what she read. Seeing her reaction, Laura craned her neck to look and then scoffed. That guy is hilarious. He doesn't want you to take any of his assets. What could you possibly take? His credit card debt. Chloe lowered her gaze and asked, what did you find? Boss, we found out that Ethan Vance only discovered you were married a few days ago when he went to register his marriage with his girlfriend. This divorce agreement also seems to be aimed at a quick separation, as if he genuinely didn't know. Laura paused, then changed her tone. But I actually think that makes it seem too deliberate. We looked into him, and it turns out that in the years since he left the Vance family, a lot of his records are untraceable. Boss, don't you find that strange? Why would an ordinary person hide his past? Chloe narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. So you think he's involved in this? Yes. As for his motive, I have no idea. Laura scratched her head. But it's been 2 years, and we were moving around a lot back then, so we really have no leads. Maybe we'll just have to wait for the old madam to remember something. Chloe gave her a cool glance. Laura quickly lowered her head. It's our failure. We'll keep investigating. Chloe printed 2 copies of the divorce agreement, stood up, and started to walk out. Have you contacted Dr. Nora? I heard she's close to developing a clinical drug for Alzheimer's. Chloe wanted to get the medicine for her grandmother as soon as possible. Laura's head sank even lower. Dr. Nora is very elusive. Because of this research, she's being watched by all the major biotech companies, so she's extremely cautious. Feeling the chill from Chloe, her voice grew quieter. Don't worry, boss. I will definitely get in touch with her. I had just finished dinner with the old woman when I received an iMessage from Chloe. I'm downstairs. Come down. I used the excuse of taking out the trash to go downstairs, and sure enough, I saw the familiar black extended wheelbase Bentley. Inside the car, Chloe handed me the divorce agreement. I have no objections. Sign it. Her dark eyes were fixed on me, expecting me to make an excuse and refuse. But I signed both copies without hesitation and even asked, "So, we'll finalize it tomorrow?" Chloe's gaze deepened. "In such a hurry? Dying to," I thought to myself. Of course I was in a hurry. My company was waiting to go public. Chloe studied me for a moment. "Fine," I reminded her. "Tomorrow morning, then. Bring your ID, birth certificate, and the marriage certificate. I'll see you at the courthouse." Chloe nodded, but then her expression suddenly changed. Her grandmother had somehow come downstairs and was standing there, pale-faced, watching us. She clutched her chest, her voice trembling. "You two are getting a divorce?" Then her eyes closed and she collapsed. Outside the VIP room at First General Hospital. "The patient is out of immediate danger for now," the attending physician said gravely. "She cannot handle any more stress. You must not upset her again." Hearing this, I thought about the emergency first aid I had just performed on the old woman, and a wave of fear washed over me. I looked at Chloe standing next to me. Her face was blank, and she seemed perfectly calm. But after the doctor said she was out of immediate danger, she reached up to loosen the collar of her blouse, slowly sat down on a bench in the hallway, and clasped her hands on her knees. I could see them trembling uncontrollably. Just then, a nurse's voice came from the room. "Madam, you're awake." Chloe immediately rushed into the room. When I followed her in, the old woman's eyes were already open. She looked at me and said in a hoarse voice, "Grandson-in-law, I had a dream that you and that little brat were getting a divorce. That's not true, is it?" I didn't say anything, but Chloe spoke up. "It's not true. If you're not getting divorced, then give me your birth certificates and the marriage license." "Okay." Chloe agreed to her every demand. The old woman then looked at me. "Grandson-in-law, is that brat telling the truth?" Remembering the doctor's warning, I paused for a moment. "Yes, it's true." Only then was the old woman satisfied. Although it was a momentary scare, she was kept in the hospital overnight for observation, so Chloe and I stayed in the room with her. As evening fell, I sat lazily on the sofa, typing a document on my phone. It was a research paper on a clinical drug for Alzheimer's. However, I was stuck on a technical problem in the final stages that I couldn't solve, and I needed to consult some biomedical literature. While I was thinking, a message from Silly Goose popped up on iMessage. "We'll get the divorce after my grandmother's condition stabilizes." It was a request I couldn't refuse. The separation agreement was already signed, so our finances were no longer entangled. Even though I was still technically married, it wouldn't affect my company's IPO anymore. The timing of the actual divorce didn't really matter. "Okay." Chloe stared at the single word on her screen and narrowed her eyes. "Do you have any other demands?" "Just that we finalize the divorce as soon as your grandmother is better." Chloe frowned, suddenly feeling that this man was unfathomable. On the bed, the old woman looked from me to Chloe. Seeing that we were barely speaking to each other, she decided that wouldn't do. The old woman suddenly announced, "You brat, I'm going to arrange a job for my grandson-in-law at Sterling Corp. If they went to work and came home together every day, seeing each other constantly, feelings would surely develop, right?" Chloe paused for a moment. "Okay." She was being unusually agreeable tonight, but the old woman was now pondering, what kind of job should it be? Then, an idea struck her. "Grandson-in-law, I'll arrange it. You'll go to work with this brat tomorrow." I blinked. "Okay." A thought had just occurred to me. Sterling Corp would have an extensive research library, and it might just contain the literature I needed. Chloe had a meeting to attend, so after saying goodbye to her grandmother, she left with Laura. But as soon as they were in the hallway, Laura said, "No wonder that man signed the divorce papers so quickly. He must have called the old madam downstairs on purpose. Now you can't get divorced at all." She looked at Chloe. "Boss, he even convinced her to get him a job at Sterling Corporation. He's definitely up to something. Why did you agree? How can he show his true colors if I don't keep him under my nose?" A sharp glint flashed in Chloe's eyes. For her grandmother's sake, a divorce was impossible right now. As for whether the man was innocent, she would see what his purpose was at the company. Back in the hospital room, as I was lying on the sofa, I heard the old woman's voice. "Grandson-in-law, I'm going to tell you a secret." I immediately sat up, suddenly alert. Had she remembered a crucial clue? Like how she knew me? Or how Chloe and I ended up married? Filled with anticipation, I asked, "Grandma, what is it? What's the secret?" The old woman leaned in conspiratorially. "I'm telling you this now so that if she bullies you, you can fight back." I was a bit confused. I wasn't particularly interested in knowing, but the old woman was eager to share. "Don't be fooled by her tough, unapproachable act. The truth is, she's afraid of cats." I was taken aback. I suddenly remembered a girl I knew as a child who was also afraid of cats. But she was just a kid. It was hard to imagine the cold, composed Chloe being afraid of cats. The old woman then asked, "Grandson-in-law, do you prefer cats or dogs?" "Dogs, I guess. I used to like cats, but the girl I knew didn't, so I stopped liking them too." I soon understood why she had asked that question. The next day, on the top floor of Sterling Corp, an adorable Shiba Inu was wagging its tail and running circles around me. Laura was speechless. Why was the job the old madam had arranged for Mr. Vance to take care of this little puppy? Chloe didn't quite understand either. They say the elderly can become like children, acting on whims. But a job that consisted of playing with a dog? It was utterly absurd. She commanded, "Take him to the new Energy RD department, Unit 1, for his orientation." This was what she had planned all along. The new energy department wasn't part of the company's core operations, but it was crucial for its future development. Placing me there was the perfect way to see what I was really up to. Laura nodded immediately. I, however, was indifferent to these arrangements. I picked up the puppy and followed Laura. "Does it have a name?" "No, the old madam wants you to name it." I glanced at Chloe's sour face and a smirk played on my lips. "Then let's call him Kitty." "You're going to name a dog Kitty? Why not?" The new Energy RD department was on the 38th floor of the Sterling Corp building. In the elevator, Laura said, "Mr. Vance, most of the employees in our RD department have PhDs, and the minimum qualification is a master's degree from a top university. You're the first one with only a bachelor's degree. You should learn from your seniors here. It will be very beneficial for your future. The boss arranged this specifically for you. Of course, you don't need to be grateful. Consider it a reward for keeping the old madam happy." My mouth twitched. I thought to myself, you really didn't have to. "By the way," she added, "the boss doesn't want your relationship to be public, to avoid any drama when you eventually divorce." I glanced at her. Coincidentally, I was worried about the same thing. Laura was dumbfounded. Was this man actually looking down on her boss? She wanted to say more, but the elevator had arrived. My first day in an office felt rather novel. No one assigned me any work, which suited me just fine. I played with Kitty in my private office for a while until the little guy curled up in a sunny corner and fell asleep. Only then did I quietly get up, close the office door, and head for the Sterling Corp's RD library. Only by creating an effective drug for Alzheimer's could the old woman's health improve enough for her to remember what happened. Then I could finally understand this bizarre marriage to Chloe. I asked a colleague for the library's location and went straight there. The Sterling Corp library was on the 60th floor. It was actually a massive private collection, accessible only to company employees. Its shelves held books covering a wide range of industries, including some research materials that were impossible to find elsewhere. I felt a thrill of excitement. My intuition told me I would find what I was looking for here. On the top floor, Chloe was working through a pile of backlogged files. Her phone pinged. It was a message from her grandmother, whose iMessage name was Fortune and Prosperity. "You brat, you have to have lunch with your grandson-in-law today. And remember to send me a picture of you two eating together intimately." Chloe frowned and was about to make an excuse about a meeting, but then she saw the chat window flash. Her grandmother's username had changed from Fortune and Prosperity to Frail Grandma Who Can't Be Stressed. Chloe fell silent. She stared at the new name for a long time before finally sighing in defeat and pressing the call button on her desk. Laura entered promptly. "Boss, what are your orders?" "Have 2 lunches sent up." Then, Chloe sent a message to Needs More Iron, telling me to come to the top floor for lunch. But by the time the food had arrived and was set on the side table, I still hadn't replied. Chloe stood up. "Where is he? Mr. Vance?" "He's in the library." Chloe went down to the 60th floor and began searching for me among the rows of bookshelves. She soon spotted me, along with Stella, who was staring daggers at me. I was so engrossed in my search for books that I didn't hear my phone vibrate. This library contained the most advanced technical materials available today. I was completely captivated. I was wandering through the aisles, lost in thought, when I backed into someone. "Sorry." I turned around and saw a familiar face. Stella was staring at me with a complicated expression. "Ethan Vance, all this effort to charm my great-grandmother. It's not just a way to get close to my aunt, is it?" My expression instantly turned cold. "That's none of your business." But Stella continued, "My aunt has never shown interest in any man. Don't think you can win her over with just your looks. She's not that shallow. Hasn't she already brushed you off with some meaningless job?" I scoffed. "Are you saying that the reason you chased me for so long was because you are that shallow?" Stella was at a loss for words. I looked at the girl in front of me. She had been my only friend in college. I had even seriously considered her, and when she told me she had a surprise for me at graduation, I had wondered if I should finally accept her advances. I never imagined we would end up like this. I sighed. Stella, can't we just part on good terms? No. Stella's eyes instantly reddened. I know you hate me for proposing to Brandon, but I had no choice. Marriages between prominent families involve so many factors. I tried to make it work for you. My mother even agreed to let me be with a commoner. But your status. No matter what, I could never marry an illegitimate son. How would I face my family? I'd become the laughingstock of Seacrest City. I just looked at her. When I was younger, my status used to make me feel ashamed, but by the time I left the Vance house, I had learned that self-respect is what truly matters. I looked away. Thank you for the favor of not marrying me. I tried to leave, but Stella blocked my path again. I can arrange for you to work on my team. I'll have someone brilliant mentor you. I know you're ambitious, and you're so smart, you'd learn quickly and be independent in no time. You wouldn't have to work odd jobs anymore. I cut her off. What's the condition? Divorce your wife and be with me. Stella couldn't bear the thought of sharing me with another woman. It drove her mad. My reply was cold. You're not worthy. Why not? Are you that in love with your street punk wife? Do you think I couldn't pay her off or have someone intimidate her into leaving you? How could she possibly compare to me? At that, I slapped her without a second thought. Even after, my anger hadn't subsided. I looked at her coldly. I didn't want to crush your ego, but since you insist on digging, I'll tell you. My wife is more beautiful than you, and she has a better figure. After saying that, I turned to leave, only to see Chloe standing around the corner. I fell silent. Chloe was silent too. Stella stood frozen, her eyes dark, her fists clenched tightly. One day, she vowed, she would make me come crawling back to her. She took a deep breath, and once the sting in her cheek subsided, she called Brandon. Aren't you meeting Drive North for dinner tomorrow afternoon? Take me with you. Meanwhile, Chloe used the excuse of lunch to take me to the top floor. Once we were in her office, she pointed to the side table. You can eat first. I still felt a little guilty. From her calm demeanor, I hoped she hadn't heard what I said. Just then, I heard the click of a phone camera. Chloe calmly took a picture, sent it to frail grandma who can't be stressed on iMessage, and then walked over. I knew why she was taking the picture, so I didn't ask. I just looked at the table and tried to make small talk. You have a very lavish lunch, Miss Sterling. She sat down across from me and elegantly picked up her fork. After all, you need proper nutrition to maintain a good figure. I froze. My cheeks grew warm, and my eyes briefly swept over the sliver of fair skin visible at her collar. I quickly packed up one of the meals. Miss Sterling, I just remembered I haven't fed Kitty yet. I should go. I picked up the container. Thanks for lunch. Chloe's expression stiffened for a second. I, on the other hand, was delighted. Just like that, the end of the workday arrived. I picked up Kitty and left. On the top floor, Chloe finished her work for the day, checked the time, and stood up to go home. But Laura asked, Boss, where are you headed? Chloe paused. She realized she hadn't asked where her grandmother was. She dialed the old woman's number. Where are you? Whose house? Her grandmother's reply was unexpected. At the hospital. Chloe frowned. Didn't the doctor say you could be discharged? But I had some chest pains this afternoon, so I wanted to stay a few more days. You brat, are you coming to stay with me tonight? It's fine if you don't. I'm just a poor old woman, all alone, with no one to care for me. I'll just stay in the hospital by my lonesome, waking up in the middle of the night wanting a sip of water with no one around. Sigh. Life is so hard. I'm on my way. That's more like it. Oh, and by the way, I already told my grandson-in-law, and he's coming to stay with me too. You two can come together. After hanging up, Chloe rubbed her temples. She knew exactly what her grandmother was up to. Whether she went back to the Sterling estate or I went to my apartment, they would be apart at night. But at the hospital, if they both stayed over, they would have to spend more time together. But Ethan Vance had a girlfriend. Chloe pursed her lips. She wanted to keep her distance from me, but thinking of her grandmother's health, she suppressed her annoyance and sent me an iMessage. I'll pick you up after work and we'll go to the hospital. This time, my reply was quick. No need. I'm already in a cab on my way. He knew how to avoid any awkwardness, and he wasn't using her grandmother's favoritism to get clingy. Chloe should have been pleased, but for some reason, she felt a new wave of irritation. I wasn't really thinking about it that deeply. I just didn't want to get too involved with Chloe until the truth about our marriage was uncovered. This whole bizarre marriage had to be a mess that started on her end. After all, who would pay any attention to a weak, pitiful, helpless nobody like me? I carried the Shiba Inu and walked straight into the hospital's inpatient wing, heading for the VIP section. Not far away, Mrs. Eleanor Vance had just finished a checkup. Brandon was supporting her by the arm, and they both watched me as I walked away. Mrs. Vance said hesitantly, "Was that Ethan? What's he doing at the hospital? Is he sick?" A flicker of annoyance rose in Brandon. The news of the Sterling matriarch's hospitalization couldn't be kept from the family. But the old woman was stubborn and refused all visitors. He had tried to visit her today but was turned away at the door. So Ethan must be here to see that old hag. His eyes darted around. He's probably here to visit the old Mrs. Sterling. Ethan is so filial. At his words, the nanny, Maria, who was with them, looked displeased. She frowned. Filial? I haven't seen him come to visit the madam once. Maria was in her 50s, about 10 years older than Eleanor, and had been her personal caregiver for years, having never married. Mrs. Vance treated her like an older sister, so Maria held a high position in the Vance household. Even Brandon was very polite to her. Hearing this, Mrs. Vance looked a little sad. Ethan had such a hard life in our house back then. Maria immediately cut in. Madam, you're still defending him. While I can't stand that petty Linda Reed, she was right about one thing. That boy Ethan is an ungrateful wretch. You waste your time thinking about him and worrying about him, but he's probably forgotten all about you. Brandon added, I heard Miss Sterling got him a job at her company, so he's probably just trying to repay the old matriarch. Maria scoffed. The madam raised him. When he was a baby and Linda wouldn't care for him, it was the madam who fed him. She was the one who sent him to school. The debt of being raised is the greatest of all, but I don't see him trying to repay the madam. Mrs. Vance quickly stopped her. That's enough, don't say any more. But Brandon continued, Mom has a good heart. She never expected anything in return when she helped people. But some people know how to repay a drop of kindness with a fountain of gratitude, like Drive North. Mom only sponsored a small part of his education, but look how much he's helped our family over the years. 3 years ago, when the company was on the verge of bankruptcy, Drive North gave us a technology patent that saved us. Maria nodded in agreement. When you put it like that, Drive North is so much better than Ethan. Brandon immediately feigned curiosity. I'd love to know what kind of person Drive North is. Mom, can you take me with you tomorrow? Mrs. Vance smiled and patted his head. All right, I'll take you. Chatting, the group went downstairs and left from the parking garage. I happened to see all of this from the VIP room, where I was sitting on the sofa by the bed. My eyes followed Mrs. Vance. I could see her face was an unhealthy pale, and her figure was very thin. Brandon was saying something to her, and she nodded wearily. The two of them looked close like a mother and son. I watched reluctantly until the car drove away, only then tearing my gaze away. When I turned around, I saw the old woman standing right behind me. Grandson-in-law, who was that woman? She looked so familiar. My expression softened, and I was just about to speak. You two look so much alike. The old woman's eyes suddenly lit up, a startling clarity piercing through their usual cloudiness. I remember now. She's your mother. In an instant, the air in the hospital room seemed to freeze. I stood rigid, my heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand, nearly stopping its beat. My gaze went past the old woman's shoulder, fixing on the car pulling away outside the window until it completely disappeared from view. Mother. The word was both familiar and foreign to me. Linda Reed was my biological mother, but she had never shown me an ounce of maternal love. The only mother I had ever acknowledged in my heart was the woman who had just left, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. But she was, by name, my stepmother, Brandon's birth mother. The old woman's words struck me like a bolt of lightning, splitting open a corner of my heart I had deliberately sealed away and never dared to touch. Grandma, you're talking nonsense again. Chloe's cool voice broke the silence. She walked over and gently supported the old woman. The doctor said you need to rest. Her tone was a mixture of helplessness and firm authority, clearly dismissing her grandmother's words as another bout of confusion. I could understand. The memory and speech of an Alzheimer's patient are often jumbled. But I couldn't remain as calm as she was. The old woman grabbed my hand, desperate to say more, but that rare moment of clarity receded like the tide. Her eyes became hazy and confused again. Grandson-in-law, what did I just say? She couldn't remember. A huge wave of disappointment washed over me, but I quickly suppressed it. I helped her lie back down and soothed her gently. You didn't say anything. You just said you were tired and wanted to sleep. As I watched her drift off, the storm inside my heart refused to calm. Why did I look so much like Mrs. Vance? Was it just because I was her husband's illegitimate son? But Walter and I had almost no resemblance. On the other hand, When I was a child, I had secretly compared photos. There was indeed a striking similarity between my eyes and those of a young Mrs. Vance. Could it be that there was another secret from all those years ago? Once the thought took root, it began to grow wildly. Behind me, Chloe seemed to sense my unease. She was quiet for a moment before saying, "Don't take what my grandmother says to heart." I snapped out of my thoughts, met her probing gaze, and gave a faint smile. Of course, but I knew the seed had been planted, and I wouldn't rest until it broke through the soil and the truth was revealed. Saturday arrived quickly. I got to the private room at the restaurant early, my emotions in a state of unprecedented turmoil. Today, for the first time, I would formally meet Mrs. Vance as Drive North. The door to the room opened, and Mrs. Eleanor Vance walked in, supported by Maria. She wore a simple, elegant dress, looking even thinner than she had at the hospital. A gentle but distant smile was on her face. "Drive North, I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. You're as accomplished as they say." Her voice was soft but carried a weary, frail undertone. My heart skipped a beat. I suppressed the name that rose to my lips, stood up, and responded as a stranger. "You're too kind, Mrs. Vance. Please, call me Ethan. Without your sponsorship back then, I wouldn't be where I am today." This was the backstory I had created for Drive North, a reason that would allow me to repay her without suspicion. Hearing this, Mrs. Vance's smile became more genuine. "That's a separate matter. What you've done for the Vance family far exceeds that small bit of help." We sat across from each other, the atmosphere warm and pleasant. As I poured her tea, I discreetly observed her complexion, mentally diagnosing her condition. Just then, the door to the room was pushed open again without warning. Brandon walked in, arm in arm with Stella, a triumphant look on his face. "Mom, we're not late, are we?" His gaze landed directly on me, filled with a sense of showing off and of having the upper hand. "Drive North, we meet again." Stella held her chin high, acting as if she were the hostess of this meeting, and gave me a cursory nod as a greeting. The smile on my face faded, my eyes turning to ice. Why were they here? Mrs. Vance was clearly surprised as well. She frowned. "Brandon, why are you here? Didn't I say I had a private matter to attend to today?" "Mom, Drive North is practically family," Brandon said smoothly, pulling out a chair for Stella next to his mother and sitting down beside me. "I brought Stella so she could meet our family's great benefactor. Drive North, Stella is going to be a great help to my future career. We'll all be on the same side soon, so I hope you'll look out for us." In just a few sentences, he had twisted my goodwill into his personal connection, turning my act of repayment into a resource he could exploit at will. Stella chimed in, "Drive North, Brandon tells me you're a leading authority in the new energy field. Sterling Corp has recently been expanding into that sector as well. I'm sure we'll have many opportunities to collaborate in the future." Her condescending, entitled tone was utterly laughable to me. Before I could speak, Mrs. Vance came to my defense. "Stella, Ethan doesn't enjoy business talk. Today is just a family meal." "Mom, how is this business talk?" Brandon immediately retorted. "I'm just trying to get Drive North to help our family advance even further. By the way, Drive North, I heard you have a butterfly-shaped birthmark on your left shoulder? Coincidentally, I had one too when I was born, but it faded over time. People say it's a sign of our destined connection." He had even managed to dig up such a specific detail. He would truly stop at nothing to claim this connection for himself. But at his words, the color drained from Mrs. Vance's face. She stared at Brandon, her lips trembling, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. What did you say? Your birthmark? Wasn't it on your right shoulder?" Her voice shook, as if she had just remembered something terrifying. My heart lurched, and I snapped my head towards her. The right shoulder? Linda had pointed at the birthmark on my left shoulder countless times, cursing it as a mark of my lowly birth. Brandon froze, clearly unaware of this detail, and quickly tried to laugh it off. "Oh, Mom, that was so long ago. I must have misremembered." "Impossible." Mrs. Vance shot to her feet, pointing at him with a trembling finger. "When you were born, I bathed you myself. That birthmark was on your right shoulder. I remember it perfectly. You're not my Brandon." Overcome with emotion, her breathing became ragged, and she broke into a violent coughing fit. Her body went limp, and she started to fall. "Mom!" I threw all pretense aside and lunged forward to catch her. Her skin was cold, her pulse weak. This was bad. "Call an ambulance!" I yelled at Maria, as I carefully laid Mrs. Vance on the floor and began performing professional first aid. Brandon and Stella were frozen in shock, just staring blankly. "Ethan Vance? How are you?" Brandon finally recognized me. I ignored him, my mind focused on a single thought. Save her. I have to save her. At the hospital, the light above the emergency room door finally went out. The doctor emerged, looking exhausted. The patient is stable for now. It's a good thing she was brought in so quickly, and the first aid administered on-site was very professional. Otherwise, the outcome could have been much worse. Is there a doctor in the family? I let out a sigh of relief, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from my body. I leaned against the wall and slid to the floor. Just then, Chloe arrived in a hurry with Laura. How did she know? I looked up and met her complicated gaze. I had Laura check your schedule, she explained succinctly. She walked over and crouched down in front of me. Are you okay? Her voice held a subtle, almost imperceptible note of concern. I shook my head. Soon, Mrs. Vance was moved to a VIP room. I used the excuse of being a friend of her attending physician to stay with her. Brandon and Stella had already been summoned home by Walter for questioning. I was left alone in the room with the sleeping Mrs. Vance. I sat by her bed, looking at her pale face, a storm of emotions churning inside me. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jessica. Boss, the results are in. Her voice was filled with a suppressed shock. Your DNA is a 99.99% match with Mrs. Vance's. Boss, 22 years ago, they were really switched at the hospital. Even though I had suspected it, the moment the truth was confirmed, a sharp pain pierced my heart. Linda Reed, my own biological mother, had personally thrown me from a life of privilege into the mud, forcing me to live in humiliation as an illegitimate son for 22 years. And her own son had shamelessly enjoyed everything that should have been mine. I hung up the phone, took Mrs. Vance's cold hand in mine, and whispered, "Mom, I'm back." After some time, Chloe came in and handed me a glass of warm water. Here, drink this. I took the glass but didn't drink, just looked at her. Aren't you curious? I am, she admitted freely. But this is your family's business. If you want to talk, I'm here to listen. Looking into her calm eyes, the raging storm of anger and grief inside me miraculously began to subside. I told her everything, from my suspicions about being switched at birth to the DNA results I had just received. She listened quietly, and when I was done, she didn't offer any empty words of comfort. She simply asked, "What do you need me to do next?" In that moment, I suddenly understood her grandmother's wisdom. Chloe Sterling wasn't just a powerful business queen. She was the one person who could bring me a sense of stability in the midst of my chaos. Just stay with me, I said. The next day at the Vance family villa, I walked into the home I hadn't entered in years, with Chloe by my side and the damning DNA report in my hand. Walter, Linda, and Brandon were all in the living room. Mrs. Vance was still too weak and had remained at the hospital. When Walter saw me, he frowned. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "About your mother. My mother is at the hospital and she's recovering well." I cut him off coldly, throwing the report onto the coffee table. "I came today because I want you all to see this." The moment Linda saw me, she shrieked, "You wicked child! How dare you come back? You impersonated Drive North at the restaurant yesterday and got Brandon yelled at by his father all night. What are you trying to do now?" Brandon's face was also grim. Walter picked up the report, his expression growing darker with every word. Finally, he snapped his head up, looking from me to Brandon in utter disbelief. What is this?" he stammered. I turned to Linda and asked, word by word, "You always said I owed Brandon. Now, can you tell me, what exactly do I owe him?" The color drained from Linda's face. She collapsed onto the sofa, trembling, but still trying to lie. "I don't know what you're talking about. You forged this. You're just jealous of Brandon. Is that so?" I sneered, took out my phone, and played a recording. It was from the hospital yesterday, when I had guided her, in her emotional breakdown, to confess the whole truth. "I hate Eleanor Vance. Why did she get to be Mrs. Vance while I had to be a secret mistress? I wanted my son to have the best of everything. I wanted her to raise my son, to give him everything that was hers. And her son, he deserved to live in the dirt like a dog." When the recording finished, the living room was deathly silent. Walter was shaking with rage. He slapped Linda hard across the face. "You venomous woman." Linda fell to the floor and finally broke down, sobbing hysterically. Brandon's face was ashen. He knew it was all over. I didn't spare them another glance. I just said to Chloe, "Let's go." Behind us, I could hear Walter's cries of regret and Linda's desperate wails. But none of it had anything to do with me anymore. A few months later, with Chloe's help, Linda and Brandon were prosecuted for multiple crimes, including commercial fraud and identity theft, and received the punishment they deserved. Stella, for her involvement, was completely disowned by the Sterling family and left in disgrace. Walter transferred the majority of his shares in the Vance company to my name as compensation, but I didn't accept them, instead putting them under the management of a professional team. My clinical drug for Alzheimer's was also a success. My grandmother's health improved day by day, and she could even clearly remember the events of 2 years ago. One day, she took both of our hands and said with a smile, "Back then, I saw how much pressure the family was putting on Chloe, and I happened to find out about young Ethan's true parentage and his talents. I thought, why not tie you two together? Keep it all in the family, so to speak. Chloe, that child, is cold on the outside but warm on the inside, and you, Ethan, are steady and reliable. You two are a perfect match." So, it turned out that this unbelievable marriage had been born from a grandmother's deep love and foresight for her granddaughter. In the most beautiful seaside chapel in Seacrest City, Chloe and I held our wedding. My mother and her grandmother sat side by side in the front row, their faces beaming with contentment and joy. The officiant asked me, "Mr. Ethan Vance, do you take Miss Chloe Sterling to be your wife, for better, for worse?" I didn't wait for him to finish. I turned to look at my beautiful bride, her eyes shining with a gentle light I had never seen before. I took the microphone, and facing all our guests, and facing her, I said with all my heart, "I do." Many people might say our story began as a bizarre accident or a calculated arrangement. But for me, from the moment I saw our marriage certificate at the courthouse, it was destined that the only wife I would ever have in this life would be you, Chloe Sterling. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. She took the microphone, her voice clear and firm. "I do. Ethan Vance, thank you for showing up on my legal documents and for walking into my life." We exchanged rings and, surrounded by the blessings of everyone we loved, we shared a deep and heartfelt kiss. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, bathing us in a warm, bright light. Our story was just beginning.